This is a continuation of 8-2, and we're looking at example 8-7. A researcher claims that the average wind speed in a certain city is 8 miles per hour. A sample of 32 days has an average wind speed of 8.2 miles per hour. The standard deviation of a population is 0.6 miles per hour. At alpha of 0.05, is there enough evidence to reject the claim? Step 1. Set up your null hypothesis and the alternative hypothesis, identify the claim, and write down all of the necessary statistics. A researcher claims that the average wind, so the word average is a big one, so we're doing the mu, speed in a certain city is 8 miles per hour. The first sentence will give me a setup for the null hypothesis. The mean is equal to 8. A sample of 32 gave me an n. Has an average, so a sample has an average, meaning they gave me an average of the sample. They gave me an x bar. The standard deviation of the population is 0.6. Is there enough evidence to reject the claim? What are we trying to claim? The researcher claims that the average wind speed is 8 miles per hour. So he's trying to claim that it is equal to 8. The alternative hypothesis, if there is no words that says greater versus less than, you must assume that it's a two-tailed test, meaning that you have a not equal to. The fact that I'm hypothesizing about a mu with a standard deviation of a population given with a sigma known, we are using a zTest. Please state the test and state whether it's a two-tailed or a one-tailed test. If it's a two-tailed test with an alpha of 0.05, the critical region is divided into two pieces, where you have 2.5% on each side. If you want, you can always look up the z value, the critical value that corresponds to the critical region. Or we can continue with the calculator and look at this as a p-value test. So the first example was a traditional method. This is a p-value method. In order to continue with the p-value method, the easiest way to do this is through the calculator. Go into stats. Go over to tests, and you need a z-test. The z-test will the first thing it's going to ask you is, do you have a data or you have stats? All of the examples that are in my book so far are stats, meaning they gave you the necessary statistics. If they do not give you the necessary statistics, but rather they give you a list of values, this is where you type in the data, just like we did in chapter 7, and you're going to use the data. The first thing it's going to ask you is, what is the null hypothesis, the mu sub 0? We're going to type in the mu that is used in your null hypothesis, which is an 8. Then it's going to ask you for the standard deviation of a population, which is 0.6. Then it's going to ask you for the sample mean, which is 8.2. And the number of people that were used in order to find the sample. So in this case, it's 32. Then the test will ask you, is mu not equal to that 8, less than 8, or greater than 8? So you have choose. Do you have a two-tail test, a left tail, or a right tail? In this case, we are choosing mu not equal to mu sub 0. And you want to push calculate. What the calculate button will give you is, first of all, on the top, you have the name of the test. The second thing that you have is you have the alternative hypothesis. Then you get that 1.89, and this is your test statistic. The next little p is actually the p-value. So since we already labeled p as something else, please do not write down p. The p-value is at 0.059. I want to use a few more decimal places because it's really big. And what you want to do is you want to compare the p-value to the alpha that is given to you. The alpha that's given to me is 0.05. Notice the p-value is greater than 0.05. What this means is this p-value, if you divide this by 2, 0.059, you're going to divide this by 2. This will give you 0.0295. This will give you the size of each tail, basically. So the p-value is the size of the tail. If you have to split it into two pieces, then each piece is going to be 295. And notice that it falls into the non-critical region. So if the p-value is greater than the alpha, you do not reject the null hypothesis. And then what you want to do is you want to be able to write down the sentence. There is enough evidence So if we do not reject the null hypothesis, we agree with the fact that mu is equal to 8. So there is enough evidence to suggest that the average speed the average wind speed is 8 miles per hour. What I want to outline right now is the red box that will give you a blueprint on how to use a p-value method. If p-value is less than or equal to alpha, we reject the null hypothesis. If p-value is greater than alpha, do not reject the null hypothesis. If you're going to box anything, you need to box this, because all of the formulas will be calculated using your calculator. My main concern is, do you understand what it is that you're doing? I will end this video, and the next video will actually talk about more examples in the next section. The next video will include these examples using a calculator.